Alright, number 14. This one will either be very, very controversial or very, very uncontroversial, depending on who you are. And I think if he wasn't taking expanded media into account, at least, well, I haven't heard any of their new Big Finish audios yet, but I hear they're pretty good. So I think, but if I wasn't taking expanded media into account a few years ago, I think this one might have been the weakest Doctor. Although, again, it's competition with them and 5 at the moment. But right now, this is my least favorite Doctor of the new series, besides the War Doctor. Number 14. And this is the 13th Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker. Okay, first of all, this has absolutely nothing to do with her being a female Doctor. I am very happy they brought in a female Doctor. I want them to do it again. I want the next... Well, I don't know what they're doing with Billie Piper at the moment. But after that, let's have another one. Let's do some more. I thought Russell T Davies was going to cast a female Doctor, but I guess Ncuti Gatwa stole the show, so they cast him. Which, to be fair, great choice. More on him later. But I don't know, and Jodie is a great actress, but between the writing and the characterization, I think she probably is the weakest of the new Who Doctors, and also one of the weak, besides possibly the War Doctor. But that's more for lack of appearances rather than not having as much time to shine as the main incarnations. Again, expanded media fixes that. Whilst 13, for the main incarnations, I think it's probably a bit of a weaker angle. I can see again what they're doing with her, like with the 5th and 6th Doctors. She's more of a socially awkward but still fun-loving incarnation, losing some of that baggage the 12th Doctor had of "Am I a good man or not?" personality, but then throwing more baggage on top of her when Gallifrey's destroyed again, and she finds out about the Timeless Child, which are decisions that are controversial and debatable in their own rights, but we'll stick into characterization. Jodie does a really great job in the role. She gets better. I think she gets better as it goes along. Because series 11, she's just the socially awkward, but still quite fun-liking incarnation, reminiscent of the 10th Doctor, but more 10th and 11th Doctors in that sense. But with moments of like standing up to villains and being a bit more serious when nobody else is looking. When her friends are with her, she's more, fam, enjoy, let's have some fun. And then when they're not when they're not away, she's like, "You villains, what you're doing is really bad. I will stop you." Okay, she does it more seriously than that, but I'm kind of paraphrasing. And then sometimes when she has to do that, but her companions are watching, she's kind of like a more middle ground, like in I was about to say Flux and Flatline, not those episodes. Kablam, in Kablam, it was a single title episode. Yeah, I think series 12 gives her more meat to chew on in quite a few scenes, but again, the writing of that is debatable. And series 13 and the specials as well, we're getting a bit more of the, like, how things are affecting her more. Again, the writing quality, debatable. Same with the whole Phasmin stuff. I think Phasmin, when I first heard it, I thought it might be a bit of a... I'm going to be honest, I think I was a bit worried that the first female Doctor being bi or lesbian, which is actually totally fine. But I think I was a bit worried, like, they've just done this major change. It might be a bit too soon to do this. Maybe later on down the line. I don't know what I was thinking there. I think it was because the reaction to her was so bad at the time that whilst I was still pro female Doctor, I think I was like a little bit worried about some of the other choices they might do. Thinking about that was probably a strange way of thinking about it. Thankfully, it worked out in the end. Well, debatably, because Phasmin, I think that came more from people shipping it. And like I think, well, there was the whole thing about it I just mentioned, but it was more of a ship rather than, and maybe Yaz being more enamored with the Doctor during series 12, that led to the ship being like the sub, like any subtext became the text. And Series 13, and especially the specials after it, delved into it. I think had it become more, if it was the plan, I think it should have come a bit more during Series 12, so that it doesn't just come out somewhere during Series 13. But now we got the audios. That gap's being plugged with new stories between Revolution of the Daleks and Flux Chapter 1 Halloween Apocalypse. So, Big Finish, you're known for you're fixing the mistakes of the TV series, mostly, and sometimes causing your own mistakes. But you know, that's storytelling and fiction for you. You're not always perfect, but yeah, but you're well known for taking characters from eras that people like, but maybe not quite enjoy the eras or the stories, or they do like them, but think there could be a bit more meat to it, and you give them the meat. You give them the meat in a nice dish, or even just a plain dish sometimes. And yeah, there you go. So they're plugging that gap. Apparently, the next one's going to have them meet the Ice Warriors in Sheffield. Sonia, Yaz's sisters, are going to be involved, and also they're meeting Sixth Doctor friend DC Mendes, played by novice AIM actress Hannah Hope, and that's the 7th one they're doing. Although apparently in the first one she drinks bathwater, the 13th Doctor drinks bathwater, which I kind of winced at when I heard about that. So it's more yay than nay by the sounds of it. Where 13 struggles is, I think, again, she, like 5, she's a bit more passive earlier on, but then, like I said, she gets a bit more, she toughens up and she gets a lot more thrown on top of her as things go along. Also, the technobabble. Unfortunately, Jodie Whittaker can't do technobabble as well as some of her other incarnations. Like David Tennant, he will spout exposition and make it look easy. Jodie looks like she's struggling. This is nothing against her as an actress, or even the scripts, but perhaps they got a bit too obsessed with technobabble. And funny enough, I thought Praxius was going to be the episode where they were going to loosen it up a little. They were going to be a little bit easy on her, only to make it probably the most technobabble episode that she had, or the most exposition she had to say at that point of her tenure. On the whole, there is something missing from the 13th Doctor that I feel other Doctors, especially New Who Doctors, have, and I think the problem is, I think they went too passive earlier on, or not so much passive. They went too socially awkward, nice earlier on, that they're trying to catch up for lost time with the darker side and the more. But they do a good job with the character personality, and Jodie, as I mentioned, is really great in the role. But when I'm comparing, again, like with Peter Davison and Colin Baker's Doctors, when I'm ranking them all by each other, yeah, again, she has to go down the lower on the list. And War Doctor aside, and especially when taking Expanded Media into account, she does end up being the weakest of the New Who Doctors. Sticking to the Jodie Whittaker era, however, we got our second and final guest Doctor, non-numbered, with... And that is, of course, the Fugitive Doctor, played by Jo Martin, who, again, is getting some Expanded Media stories, and also got a comic. Also, the upcoming Circuit Breaker series, which I probably wouldn't have, if I'd done this afterwards, I probably still wouldn't be able to include outside of maybe some webcast video stuff, which I think they're doing 2 of them, the first one and then one later on down the line, but they could be short stories, like with Doomsday's bookending ones. From what I hear, I'd rather they did the video one. If they got Jo Martin and Ingrid Oliver as Osgood to do this, then I'd rather they do minisodes rather than. In fact, to be honest, I think they should have done that for Suze Kempner as well for Doom. I would rather they be minisodes that everybody can enjoy than just stories on the website, fine. And then everyone can enjoy those there. But I think the webisodes or minisodes would be even better. And then you get to film them as well. That'd be great. You can have something officially filmed, even if it's not a full episode. But that aside, Fugitive Doctor. Okay, so Fugitive Doctor's down here again, because, again, we don't have many appearances with her, but she's above 13, and also 6 is 5, and War Doctor, because of the personality. She is basically like what 6 and 7 were. I mentioned they were kind of opposite ends to each other for the most part. That's the same we've got here with 13 and Fugitive. They are polar opposites to each other in many ways. Fugitive, at least in Fugitive of the Judoon, she is much more tougher, angrier, and not afraid to do things that need to be done that other doctors may not necessarily do. Not even the War Doctor, probably before coming to terms with him being the Doctor again, would be like, they would look at her and be like, whoa, calm down. And they don't necessarily have to follow the Doctor's code like the other ones do, besides the War Doctor during the war. But that being said, it does limit, in Future of the Judoon, it does limit what she can say and do. But when we get to other episodes where we see her, we do kind of have a bit more broader scope on where to take it, especially with Storing the Engine, when we get some backstory regarding her and Abby, daughter of Anansi. This is all that actually brings me to another problem. The Fugitive Doctor, we only really get, despite having 5 appearances plus Circuit Breaker coming up and the comic, sticking to TV, we've got 5 Fugitive Doctor appearances, but we've only got really 1 with her properly as like the second main Doctor of that story, and most of that is in the human form before they break the glass and get the memories back. Chameleon Circuit style. And then the Doctor for the rest of the episode. But after that, Timeless Children, it's a Matrix projection where she's giving the 13th Doctor a pep talk. Once Upon a Time, Chapter 3 of Flux, we're reliving, the 13th Doctor's reliving a mission that Fugitive did. So, Fugitive did go on this adventure back when she was the Doctor, but 13's sort of reliving this because they jumped into the time stream on Planet Time and they're doing all of these stuff relating to that. And so we're flipping between 13 and Fugitive rather than letting one or the other have time to shine in the role. I think it was a great reveal about it being a past mission, leaning more into the whole Timeless Child aspect, pre-First Doctor life that she's never going to find answers for, or any of them are going to find answers for, apart from 7, because 7 knows everything. But then the episode can't really make up its mind on which Doctor it wants to follow in the scene. It would have been absolutely great to see Fugitive with a little bit of 13, so we know she's reliving this, but it keeps flipping between the two, so it's a bit of a shame we can't have Jo Martin have more time to shine. Though Jodie is great in these scenes as well, by the way. So, proper, another point to the 13th Doctor. And then coming to Power the Doctor, she's a hologram. A bit like the 13 hologram when the Master steals the Doctor's body, and then when 5 and 7 are talking to Tegan and Ace respectively. Shame there wasn't a 6th Doctor hologram. But then again, I guess the character you would have to talk to would be Kate. Well, the 6th Doctor did meet the Brigadier in Dimensions in Time and in audio, so not too far off. It could have been any Doctor speaking to her. But yeah, it was a really great moment when Fugitive's hologram came in to basically distract the Dalek Sidemen and the Master, and before they could get him into the chamber to degenerate him back into 13. And then Storing the Engine, it's Abby kind of reminiscing on Fugitive, and sort of maybe thinking about what they would be saying. Again, that's not really made clear. Unless 15 has remembered what he was doing, and Abby's picturing the Fugitive in this moment. But again, not entirely made as clear of what's going on. It's probably the least clear inclusion of Fugitive. Cool new shirt though, because I think they had to get another shirt for her or something for the costume, and they're getting another costume update this year with Circuit Breaker getting a purple shirt and purple hat. Matches the dark blue coat. Is it dark blue purple coat? But staying true to the character. And I think Circuit Breaker as well. I mean, I have to read the Titan comic that Fugitive is in, which looks like, by the looks of it, is serves as the build up to why she goes rogue. And then Big Finish Audios have her already on the run anyway, so like post Fugitive of the Judoon perhaps. But yeah, she's really good in Coda, the final act, the last part of Once and Future. But I have to compare to listening to the other ones. But I think Circuit Breaker is going to be the big thing for the for this incarnation. This is going to be her big shining point after her introduction in Fugitive of the Judoon. This is the big one. This is the big story that we're going to be following. It's multimedia stuff, so I can understand everybody not getting into everything. I'm not going to get into everything. Probably going to get into most of it, but I think I'm definitely going to be leaving the games to a side. Trying to try to get to the rest, but Big Finish stuff's all in pre-order. Doctor Who Magazine will come as I'm subscribed, and Titan I'm going to get that collection at the end when it's released in December, or I'll get it after it's released at least. Puffin book, and if it's one of the whole Puffin Classics series, then yes. Otherwise, maybe not. And then the big DJ Martin written book absolutely will as well. And we'll read or watch the online content. Was there another stuff? Oh yeah, and the Blu-ray. Want to get it, but don't have to get it so soon. Besides, it's not as key to the other stuff. Yeah, but I think Circuit Breaker is going to be the big thing for this incarnation, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing how the character grows across the multimedia range of stories that are coming out later this year, mainly in the summer and early autumn. But in terms of the 5 television appearances, only one of which is a proper appearance, and the rest are Matrix projection, reliving a previous mission, which is the next closest thing to a proper appearance. Hologram or memory vision thing. But it's still a range of good appearances for the character, even though we haven't really had a full proper episode with her, much like the War Doctor got. So even though she's had more appearances, she hasn't had as much time to shine as the War Doctor did in the one episode, or the 8th Doctor in his main episode and his minisode. So yeah, she's probably had even though she's had more appearances than 8 and War, and even 14, they've had more time to shine. Even the War Doctor, who's another non-numbered incarnation, because it's his story, effectively. Day of the Doctor's more about him than 10 or 11, so it's more about 11 than 10, but more about War than either of them. So, yeah, I think if we had an episode like that for the Fugitive Doctor, aside from Fugitive of the Judoon, because that's only like the last third, because the other 2/3 are with her human persona, Ruth. I think we would have I think she'd be a bit more higher up if we had a story like Day of the Doctor, or not necessarily like Day of the Doctor, just a story with her more prominent throughout, or most of it, as opposed to having her being human for a bit, or the other episodes, how she appears. And like I said, Circuit Breaker and the expanded media are going to be the closest we're going to have for that. So we're hoping so that's another reason why I want the main online stuff to be minisodes rather than short story, prose stuff. We can only hope. Oh well. Well, I suppose if they can't get Billie Piper or David Tennant into the Christmas special, she's probably the next best option to get in. That or finally giving us another Paul McGann episode. Speaking of, number 12. Another anniversary celebrated at the time of my 20 years of being a Doctor Who fan was the 30th anniversary of the UK broadcast of the TV movie, starring Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor. And whilst this video is going out a little bit later than those anniversaries, again, we're more around the time of the 20th anniversary of Impossible Planet Satan Pit. But even though I was celebrating 20 years as a Doctor Who fan last month, mainly with that live stream, we were more, as a community, despite Series 2's 20th anniversary going on at the moment, we were more kind of celebrating the 30th anniversary of the TV movie, especially now with the new 4K upscaled release. And yeah, it was absolutely amazing to watch it at BFI. That being said, and putting expanded media aside, again, I'm going to have to put the 8th Doctor down in 12th place. So the 8th Doctor, played by Paul McGann, is my 12th option. Now, putting expanded media back in, oh yeah, he would absolutely be even higher. He'd be even higher than Colin. And John Hurt / Jonathan Carney. But going by TV, we have to just have the TV movie and Night of the Doctor and his archive footage in Day of the Doctor, and his appearance in Power of the Doctor, which, by the way, is a really great scene, which feature almost all of the Doctors I've talked to so far. Putid's not in that scene, but she's in other scenes, another scene, and there's no War Doctor. But apart from them, every Doctor up to here has been in that, and we've got one more coming up later who's in that scene as well. And they're all really great in it, and one Doctor we've had and that other Doctor coming up having those other hologram scenes, which are also really great. More so for Peter Davison's one, to be honest. And there's also Tales in the TARDIS, which are also really great for Doctors 5, 6, and 7. But the 8th Doctor, for me, he's the mainline incarnation with the least number of episodes. He's only had one main episode and a minisode. Arguably, he's had less appearances than any other Doctor, including War and Fugitive. Quantity, I suppose, more than War. But that being said, he is amazing. Paul McGann is amazing. The 8th Doctor is amazing. In just an hour or so of screen time, well, not even an hour or so of screen time, but an hour or so of the movie, he is incredible. I think in my review I said if he had gotten a tenure, he would be the definitive Doctor, carrying the best of traits from his 7 predecessors. Now, definitive is debatable on what that means. If you're going for more iconic, then I would point to Tom Baker or David Tennant. Definitive, I was talking more about the character and how he was channeling how his character was in the movie and how he was channeling his predecessors, but also kind of hinting at what his successors would be. He didn't really have the dark side that much in that film, but it was his first appearance, so again, like with Jodie and Peter Davison, that would have been something he would have developed. And similarly with Colin Baker, with developing the nicer side of the character as time would have gone on. And we see this with Peter Capaldi as well when we get to him, and William Hartnell, and more. But Paul McGann is absolutely incredible as the 8th Doctor. The character is I think he was absolutely great. Once we got past the amnesia stuff, and even then the amnesia stuff was fine in the film, I think the fact that they tried to do it every other story with the 8th Doctor for the next couple of years, the 8th Doctor's book, Minute in Hell, or audio, yes, he had amnesia in his first episode, but you don't have to make every other story the 8th Doctor's in give him amnesia. I know you don't have much to go on, but that's like saying if the 7th Doctor just had season 24 and half of his a quarter of his expanded media stories were him just going a bit crazy and falling down everything because he had post-regenerative trauma. Or if the 9th Doctor, you just had half of series 1 and he's just brooding with a couple of funny moments. But the second half, I think, definitely leads more into the Doctor Rose relationship even more in a more healing way. It's just leaning on the amnesia subplot, or the amnesia plot as a main plot. Almost every story. Yeah, I can understand it getting old, and I think I probably would have found it old. Thankfully, I think they got away from that eventually. Thank God. The amnesia plot is fine in the film, and I can kind of see it in 8 Doctors, but by Minute in Hell, it probably got tedious. And if they did it after Minute in Hell, which I think they did, it was probably getting tiring. It was probably a worn-out trope by the time the new series came along, and McGann wasn't the incumbent incarnation anymore. And the books and the comics stopped with him and had to move over to Christopher Eccleston. Audio's not so much because they were doing their own thing. That being said, they were doing the whole Divergence series. They were planning that to be 4, but then when the new series coming back, they cut it down to 2 and then went back to doing 8th Doctor audios like the first, the 5th, 6th, and 7th Doctors after that. As opposed to, and then later did audios in new series styles to get new listeners on board. Good idea, though. But yeah, TV movie, 8th Doctor is magnificent in his first story. Once we get past the amnesia stuff, and even the amnesia stuff was fine. It's just every other time after that, then it starts getting annoying. As for Night of the Doctor, you can definitely see that his character's shifted a lot since the TV movie, especially when we saw it at BFI. We screened the movie, and after a bit of talking, we got a screening of Night of the Doctor, and the personality difference was notable, probably because Stephen Moffat wrote it, but also because it was set at the end of the Time War. Not the end of the Time War. It's the end of the Eighth Doctor's life during the Time War, and he was encountering someone who did not want to be rescued by a Time Lord, and he wouldn't leave them so stubbornly. So he ends up dying in the crash. The one thing I'm not really keen on with Night of the Doctor is the Eighth Doctor acting a little bit like the 11th and 12th, when he's like, 4 minutes? That's loads of time. Get me this and this, and oh, you're the Sisterhood of Utter Boredom. Those bits for me don't feel like the Eighth Doctor, either from the film or from the audios or other media. I would say that's Stephen Moffat, just doing Stephen Moffat-y Doctor stuff. Whether that's 11 or 12 or anyone else for that matter. Actually, Warren 10 weren't so bad with it. It was better characterization than the 5th Doctor, who acted more like the 6th, or the 1st Doctor, who basically became a parody of himself. But I think Moffat does do the 8th Doctor very well, and it does do a great story. It's just that bit whole with the, Sisters of the Flames of Boredom, and I've got plenty of time, give me this and that stuff to do before I die. I think those kind of hamper a little bit of my experience, but that and the fact that it's only 6 minutes long, I think it could have been 10. I think it should have been a whole episode, or at least a 25-minute episode, harking back to the classic series as a bonus special, maybe a Halloween special. I know they released it early to time for Paul McGann's birthday, which was a nice present. They released it a couple of days early for that on, I think, on the website, and then I play it 2 days later. I Red Button. It's still really good, and I think the 8th Doctor is handled very well there, except for those bits I take a little nitpick with, because I feel that's just typical Stephen Moffat Doctor writing at this point, rather than it's the 8th Doctor saying this. But I do get he's trying not to get into the war, he's trying to avoid it. We hear some of this in some Big Finish stories with him during the Time War. He's trying not to get involved too much, he's just helping out on the sides, but now he's given up. He's prepared. He's given up and prepared to become a warrior to fight the main fight. And yeah, this episode is a really good showcase of a Doctor who's once wide-eyed with wonder and loving, romantic, and now everything has just kind of stripped him away to someone he's still holding on to who he is, but he can't hold on for much longer, so he has to go for the warrior position now before he loses it forever. And at least while being the War Doctor, he can at least try and save what's left of the universe rather than watch it fall. And then you've got all of these other stuff in the middle, from Big Finish, from Doctor Magazine comics, from Titans comics one series, from BBC Books, and more, to experience the 8th Doctor's tenure both during and after his incumbency. Number 11. But this was a tricky one. I was very, very close to picking who my number 10 choice is as number 11. I was kind of quite close. I did think about it a little. But I think the reasons why I put the number 10 one there is kind of one out was a little specific. Whilst if I put this one there, it probably would have been more for the novelty, like for the notability, what they're most well known for being, rather than the more legitimate reasons why the other one ends up at number 10. So number 11 is the First Doctor, played by William Hartnell, and subsequently Richard Herndale and David Bradley, plus voice impressionists such as David Bradley again, Stephen Noonan, and also William Russell and Peter Purves, and John Gillier. Mustn't forget John Gillier. Now, I really did want the First Doctor in my top 10, because he is the First Doctor. He's the guy who started it all. And William Hartnell is his Doctor is the blueprint for everything that came afterwards, whilst also being an incredibly notable character in his own right, and even, again, going on his own character journey. It takes a bit of time, but by the time you get to 10th Planet, or even the Savages, which got animated last year, recommend checking it out. You can tell this character's come on a massive journey since An Unearthly Child. Like, in part 3 of that story, he was prepared to kill a caveman who was injured and slowing them down, so he was going to put him out of his misery. By the time you get to the Savages, I think it's part 2, he is appalled at what the Elders are doing to the Savages on the planet. So that is a massive character journey throughout nearly 3 seasons. And even by the 10th Planet, he is... Yeah, the First Doctor shows he goes from a character who doesn't really care. He's on the run from his own people. He doesn't really care about anybody else. But once he meets Ian and Barbara, and then later when they go to Skaro, he meets the Daleks. That's when we get the shift. It's a slow but steady and worth sticking with shift and character journey. He is absolutely incredible. Through it. So yeah, I didn't want him to be on the list just because of the notability of being the first, but I think his character journey is also really good. I was really, really close to putting him above the next person on the list, the next Doctor. I think that one just about wins out, and I'll explain why next time. But yeah, now we've officially moved into the ones that, like, okay, yeah, the other ones I really like, but they either haven't got as many appearances and on TV, and we have to go to expanded media for more great stuff, or they've had more time, but they could have been better. And again, maybe expanded media does that. But yeah, with the First Doctor, I think we're now at the point where we are into we've had the good ones, but we're now into the really good ones. I suppose I could have said that about Paul McGann, to be honest, but the 8th Doctor, but again, a number of appearances were why he got number 12, whilst we're at number 11 now with William Hartnell's First Doctor. Yeah, the First Doctor's character arc is amazing in perspective. Again, slow but steady, and you've got to, for the missing episodes, you've got to watch the animations or recons or listen to the audio soundtrack. Same with the Second Doctor, by the way. But yeah, this is just an absolute great character journey for the First Doctor, and he's really great. Especially like the War Games, that one, I think it's episode 3's cliffhanger, has one of the best. Like, the Doctor stands up to the villain sort of moment, sort of thing. Like, he's not afraid of the War Machine. Part 3 might be part 2. It's one of the cliffhangers. Yeah, he's just like, I've got on a big character journey, and I'm better than you, War Machine. That's my do. But yeah, that was an amazing bit, by the way. I love that. He's great, and Hartnell also really great in the role. Even though he was unwell throughout most of it, and he struggled a lot. Not that I blame him, to be honest. But yeah, I think it was kind of that added to the charm. Now, yes, there is the negative sides that Twice Upon a Time, I was going to say addressed, parodied, rather, I should say. Yes, the First Doctor sometimes maybe has said or did some things that writers or the actor of the time may have, like, they would have written in, or they may have said, like, there's some dodgy things. Though Twice Upon a Time takes those and ups them to 11 and makes the character not only unrecognisable, but also not very likeable. And unfortunately, I don't think David Bradley is quite as good in the role there as he was in An Adventure in Space and Time as both William Hartnell and the First Doctor. And heck, even Power the Doctor, he is better, thankfully. I think he also did it for Time Fracture. I think they got him in for that, and I think he was probably, from what I've seen, he was probably better there. So yeah, I think David Bradley can do a good First Doctor. It was just Twice Upon a Time, the writing, and I don't know diss Rachel Talalay, but even the directing wasn't very good for the First Doctor there. I think the fact that they just didn't do enough research on the character. Richard Turndale, on the other hand, as Dimi Looming put it, he's more tougher. He's a bit more. He's got the grumpier side but he hasn't got the twinkle or the softness that Hartnell had that made him balance it so good. And then David Bradley sounds like a teddy bear. So yeah, Bradley's first Doctor, he's got the softer side down, but he doesn't have the tougher side. And like I said, Twice Upon a Time basically makes a parody out of the character, whilst Five Doctor's first Doctor is too tough. He's too sharp for the most parts. Only a little bit of softness. Hartnell manages to bring the balance really well with the character, and it's like, I think without him, the character would not have become an icon in his own right. I don't think the character would have become as popular. The show wouldn't have become as popular. Obviously, it was the Daleks that made the show popular at the start, but I don't think the show would have continued without the Daleks if it wasn't for Hartnell and everybody else involved making the series. And that's why people stuck around to watch it after the Dalek story, and why it became so popular even without them in it. So with that all being said, I think we owe Hartnell a huge gratitude, even if maybe some other things at the time we may not agree with. Oh, don't worry, I'm going to do that with Patrick Troughton as well. But objectively speaking, we owe them a lot, and yeah, what they did was TV magic. And like I said, first Doctor's character arc, awesome. Number 10. Now, again, as I was saying earlier, I was debating between this Doctor and the first Doctor being here, and then the other one being 11th. I decided to put this one down here because also, more so because of the actor, I would say, because this actor might objectively be the best actor to play the role of the Doctor. Sorry, Tom Baker, David Tennant stands, although your Doctors are coming up later on the list as well. So, yeah, both David Tennant ones, by the way. But in terms of, like, the actor, it might be this guy. It might be this actor who is the best actor in the role. The character, on the other hand, again, I was toyed between one and this character. I think one's character development is more subtle, but I think this one's won me over in the final season of theirs, and that is the 12th Doctor, played by Peter Capaldi. Yeah, for me, the 12th Doctor's character arc is a bit up, down, and all about. But I'm happy to say that Series 10 alone more than makes up for Series 8 and 9 kind of being like, okay, where are we going with this? But I'll start from the beginning. Series 8, the 12th Doctor was designed to be a darker, more serious, mostly, and more, like, less human Doctor, I suppose, a more alien Doctor than his previous two incarnations, the 10th and 11th Doctor, maybe even more so than 9. We're going back to what they were trying to do with the 6th Doctor with this. And I think a darker, tougher, slightly less nice, not so much less nice, but like, you know, a little bit more tougher kind of incarnation can work. We've got the 9th Doctor coming up later, and even the 3rd Doctor had some, like, more, like, wasn't always Mr. Nice Guy. But I think I think the 12th Doctor is probably the strongest of the main, the most notable three, aside from maybe Eccleston and the War Doctor, are probably the 1st, 6th, and 12th Doctors of, like, especially earlier on. They're a bit more less nice than most of the others. They're a bit more tougher, darker, more serious, grumpier. And the 12th Doctor certainly meets that. They're definitely trying to go back to what they were trying to do with Colin Baker. Start him off like a kind of a less nice, more alien, tougher incarnation. And then as he goes along, he'll mellow out and be nicer. Thing with 12, though, is they were trying to also establish whether he was a good man after, like, getting a new set of regenerations after the time of the Doctor. And this was also somewhat following on from the 11th Doctor. Was he a good man? ? But he tried more to be a good man. It was more stuff that ended up happening. It was more like when he was questioning it more when he was confronted with that. The 12th Doctor was sort of like, it was more of an existential crisis sort of a thing with him, and he needed his pals to help, his pal Clara to help him through that. Series 8, this is definitely very obvious that the 12th Doctor is the more tougher and less human, more alien incarnation that they're trying to push with him. In places, this is a benefit, and Peter Capaldi fits the role perfectly, but at other times, it does feel like maybe they're trying a bit too hard with it. On the other hand, Robert of Sherwood, I think, was intended to be a Matt Smith episode when it was being written. So there's a few points there when it had to be slightly adapted to be the 12th Doctor, and the Doctor just kind of come off as a bit of a dick in places. I can understand if he doesn't believe Robin Hood is real, but he's just kind of messing about a bit and not really helping anybody until he gets captured and later has to rescue the prisoners in the castle. And then Kill the Moon, he's just being very questionable in that. However, during this season, we do get the impression that the 12th Doctor is very good with kids, mainly because Peter Capaldi wanted to, because he had grown up as a kid, as a fan, as a kid and a teen, he wanted to inspire the kids watching. He wanted them to love the Doctor as a hero as much as he did. So the 12th Doctor is, and I suppose this goes somewhat of a way to Stephen Moffat as well, in a similar vein, considering there had been quite a bit of kid involvement in the Matt Smith era as well. So there's quite a bit of interactions with kids that the 12th Doctor does, like with Courtney or with the kids in Forest of the Night or some in later seasons. Not so much with Rupert Pink. He's kind of like, he's just fed up with the situation there, but most of the time the 12th Doctor is really great with kids, and I think that's one of his strongest elements, that he could definitely, he's more comfortable talking to kids because he wants to, because the actor and maybe the showrunner as well wants the Doctor to be a big hero to them, want to be a comforting hero. And whilst he's a bit grumpier and moodier to other characters, mainly adults, when it comes to the kids, he's much more like, yes, I am very happy to like hang out with you. Well, maybe not so much in Series 8. Like but he's still really good with the interactions. I think once he gets involved with them, he starts to mellow towards them. And but Series 10 again. At the end of Series 10, he's really having a good time when he's talking to Alif. I believe her name is the kid in that, when they're doing that strategy in her bedroom and they're planning on how to stop the Cybermen, and he just whacks the soldiers down. That was a great moment from him. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I wanted to raise that point because of Series 8 and 10 and maybe 9 as well's increase of kid characters. I think Series 9 is where things start to, at least early Series 9, is when things start to kind of fall apart a little bit, because Series 8 is building up the Doctor to be, the 12th Doctor to be the darker Doctor, as I mentioned earlier. Is he a good man or not? Question mark. But when we get to The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch is Familiar, he's down in a midlife crisis again. I thought that's what we kind of did with the 11th Doctor in places. And then, as Jimmy Looming said, they've kind of twisted Peter Capaldi's excellent Doctor into a parody of Matt Smith's. And then we got the stuff with Davros, and whilst Capaldi is acting his heart out, the twist is he didn't mean a damn. The Doctor doesn't mean a damn thing of what he says, because he knows Davros doesn't, because Davros is trying to trick him. The Doctor's counter-tricking him. But unlike, say, what the 7th Doctor would do, this is just kind of, it's just them biding time for each other. Like Davros is trying to get the Doctor to use his regeneration energy to restore the Daleks. The 12th Doctor is just playing him. But it doesn't feel earned. Possibly because the Doctor was trying to avoid him as much as possible for a while, as opposed to actually getting on with the job. I think the Flood two-parter fixes this a bit better. They sort of starting to find the balance with him there. The 2 episodes featuring me, Ashilda, also sort of show the multiple sides of the 12th Doctor as he's starting to try to be more of the hero. But in sometimes sacrificing people will cause him to do rash decisions, and then later we've got to see the consequences of that. So I think those 2 episodes handle the Doctor in a good way. And then we get to the Zygon two-parter, which is a really great showcase for Capaldi as an actor, as well as the 12th Doctor, and again, sort of balance between the goofiness of being like 11, but also the more serious, darker side of his Series 8 persona. The last couple of episodes of the series I think start putting the 12th Doctor into the incarnation that we know and I prefer. Um, Although I'm not really a fan of what they do to him in Hellbent, but that's a discussion for another time. Check out my Hellbent review / rant on this channel for more information. But I can see what they wanted to do with that. I just don't think it quite works. Heaven Sent, however, is the episode which I would cite as Capaldi's best performance. I talked about this in the top 10 stories video last week. Well, it's 2 weeks ago now at time of recording. More at time of this video going out, maybe even to 3 weeks. Crikey. But yeah, I talk more about that then. And I think he's a powerhouse. Heaven Sent is the showcase for the 12th Doctor as a character and Peter Capaldi as an actor. I think Hellbent, like I said, I can see what they want to do. I don't think it quite works. It's bold moves, but unsatisfying payoff. Then we come into Class, Episode 1 and Series 10, and oh boy, this is where a 12th Doctor really... This is why the 12th Doctor's number 10 instead of number 11, which I was considering and putting the first Doctor here, but Series 10 alone, the 12th Doctor is amazing. I think it's because they've left the baggage of Clara behind, because he's forgotten about Clara. He's kind of sort of found himself as a person, so he's not... Well, he's still wearing the Sonic shades and playing the guitar, but he's not trying to act like the 11th Doctor in places. He's not trying to be having a midlife crisis. He's just kind of doing this for fun, or because that's who he is by this point, but not in a silly way. And I think I suppose Series 9 there was episodes like this, but I think it's really Series 10 that really kind of found the footing for the character. And I think the whole mental side to his character with Bill as the student, much like the 7 and 8 relationship, was the right way to go. And I think they managed to pull that off really well. And he's really great with Nardole as well. So we stand Nardole. I think Thin Ice also does a really good job as a introspective from Bill's point of view on the character's view of life and death, and whether I suppose it does challenge their beliefs and whether they can be a good person after just letting a boy die and just grabbing the sonic screwdriver and letting the boy die because there was nothing else he could do for him. He just wanted his screwdriver back. But now he's kind of facing the reality of well, maybe I'm not quite that great of a guy after all, which is in itself sounds like a better way of handling the Am I a Good Man arc than quite a few of the Series 8 episodes did. And whilst the 12th Doctor definitely cares about Clara, when it comes to Bill, he is more protective and tries to look after her more than with Clara. Clara kind of sort of became like an equal to the Doctor in Series 9, or trying to act like him. Well, he's forgotten about her during Series 10, but even if he remembered her, he probably would be trying to make sure Bill was more looked after and more protected than, because he kind of mishandled looking after Clara, which comes back to bite him in World Enough in Time, The Doctor Falls. Either way, it's handled. I also like the fact that they made the Doctor blind for about 3 episodes, well, 2.5 episodes, because he goes blind in Oxygen. Now, it was originally going to be fixed at the end of the episode, but they added a bit, because Stephen Moffat likes the idea, they added a bit of the Doctor staying blind, and it carries over until the end of the Pyramid at the End of the World, and it plays a major factor into that story, as well as Extremis. Despite Lie the Land also not being that great of a story, which is a shame because I really like Toby Whithouse scripts, I think this was more a fact of how they were going to wrap up the monk story rather than him having an off day. But I think the 12th Doctor across all 3 episodes is really great and handles the situations really well. I especially love the line in Pyramid where he goes, "Bring it," as he's about to confront the monks. And then last couple of episodes of Series 10, he's good in, like, he's really good in Empress of Mars and Eaters of Light, but it's the last 2. And to be honest, I always say he is the best thing of Twice Upon a Time as well. He's outstanding. These episodes are, again, another powerhouse for 12 and Capaldi. And I think Series 10's finale is a perfect duology, 2-parter, again, talked about this in the top 10 stories ranking video. It's a masterpiece showcasing all of the characters here. Maybe not so much Nardole, but to be honest, he's the only one who gets out unscathed, so fair dues. Yeah, it's an absolute perfect showcase for the Doctor and 12th Doctor as a whole, and exactly what the character means, and yeah, what he does, why he does it. And whilst Twice Upon a Time I don't think is a very good, I don't think that's a good episode. For 12's character, it's a decent epilogue. It's easily the stuff with 12 is the best bits. So yeah, overall, I think the 12th Doctor's arc, it's kind of a bit of a bumpy ride, but we got a really strong incarnation in the end, with an incredible actor in the role, and his character interactions mostly with the companions, but also with bonus points for being probably the most relatable with the kids. Okay, 11 tried to be relatable with the kids, but I think 12 was just more of a wanting to be the hero for the kids, which leads to really good interactions between them. It brings us a muddled, but in the end, strong incarnation, played by probably the best actor out of all of them so far. Possibly. Moving on to number 9, we've got another Doctor who has sort of darker tendencies, but also fairly lighter comedic ones, and this time it was the other way around. He started off more comedic, but got darker over time, and it was it's the darker stuff that's stronger with them than the more comedic stuff, like same with 12. And this is, of course, the 7th Doctor, played by Sylvester McCoy. The 7th Doctor, I can understand quite a few people, at least from before a few years ago, kind of finding him a bit too clownish, a bit too silly in places. And I think that's mainly looking at Time in the Rani and maybe other parts of Season 24 and Greatest Show in the Galaxy. Although that latter, because he was trying to entertain the gods of Ragnarok rather than anything else. And yeah, if you just watch Time in the Rani and maybe some other bits of Season 24 and 25, it does look a bit clownish in places. But starting from Paradise Towers, you are starting to sense that there's a bit more to this character. Delton the Bannerman, there's a really great scene at the end of part 2 where he is confronting Gavrok, and you can tell the version of the character they want to tell to portray going forward is coming out there. And Dragonfire as well, to a lesser extent, to those two. Starting in Season 25, the Doctor is becoming more mysterious, manipulative, darker, and less clownish, apart from entertaining the gods of Ragnarok, of course, and some other bits in Silver Nemesis. But yeah, he's definitely coming more like the character that would become more associated in Season 26. And I think the general public may have forgotten about the darker turn that the character has during the middle of his era, during this season, as the character's got his more kind of darker tendencies on. And then Season 26, he's definitely, like, all jokes aside, and he's full on business for the most part. There's a lot of he's definitely in Dark Doctor mode here, and I think it's good that each season sort of has a bit of each tone. Like if you want something a bit more comedic, go for most. Season 24 is a bit more silly in places, a bit more campy. Just coming off the back of the 6th Doctor's era, it's still trying to find its tone, but it's got more of the campy stuff. Season 25 is the balance, or some sort of like middle ground, as it's moving from the more silly side into the more darker side. You get a bit of both in most of the stories, and it works for the most part. And then Season 26, he's full on serious mode. He's full on for the most parts. The odd maybe a bit of silliness here and there. Like Season 24 had a couple of darker moments, serious moments. For the most part, Season 26, he is full on serious business. Yeah, there's quite a few stories in here where he definitely knows more than he's letting on, and he's definitely trying to manipulate the situation. Yeah, and I think this is the angle that they expand more. So mainly in Big Finish, but definitely for the expanded media, they mainly go for the season 26 bit of 25 portrayal. Um, yeah, and it works really well. Also, McCoy is just perfect in the role. He's just spot on. Again, he delivers every moment, whether that's silly comedy or dark seriousness, whether that's manipulation or just having a good time now and again, like when they're listening to jazz music or whatever. Then yeah, he's just great. He's so cool. The way he delivers his lines are really great. The scene in the Happiness Patrol, I think it's part 2, where he's confronting the snipers, is really memorable. It's a really great moment that highlights the darker side of the Doctor in a story that's supposed to be a bit more serious, but can't help itself but be a bit camp, especially in the original broadcast version. They can't. I mean, again, it's a story that it knows what it wants to be, but at the same time is struggling to with the tone. And I already mentioned the possibility of Seven maybe even planning his own death in the TV movie to avoid being the Valiant, as theorized by Matt Moyer. As for Dimensions in Time, well, despite being dressed in his season 26 costume, he's more like how he is in 25. Like, he's not really being scheming and manipulative, but he's not really being too silly or comedic either. So I say he's back to being in the middle ground. As for the original planned season 27, I think they probably just would have carried on where they left off with the end of season 26. I think they would have toned down the darker side, but would have definitely played more into the manipulative, or at the very least, scheming side, considering the storyline with the character who would be named Rain and the audio adaptations, how that was being planned out. But at the same time, the last story of that season was going to be McCoy's last, so he would have been a 4-season Doctor, which would have been the first Doctor to do 4 seasons, not including William Hartnell doing the first 2 stories of season 4. He would have been the Doctor with the 3rd most number of seasons at the time, after the 4th and 3rd Doctors. Alas, they cancelled the show for realsies this time. Lasted much longer than the 1985 hiatus. And McCoy would go on to be, I think, would end up being the longest incumbent incarnation because of that until the TV movie. Because I think McGann's length of incumbency would stop a little bit before then, I think. And I think McCoy definitely is a powerhouse showcase for being an incredible Doctor. It took them a bit of time to get started again, but overall, it was a strong, worthy effort in the end. And I think the fans know that. I think the fans, especially nowadays, maybe not so much back in the 80s, early 90s, though they would have probably liked him, they would have. But I think he's become more appreciative in the decades since, and like I said, Big Finish has probably helped with pushing the darker, scheming, manipulative 7th Doctor forward between, so like mainly from Survival to the TV movie, but also even with stuff pre-Survival, maybe a little bit less so with the season 24 set stories, but definitely for the rest of it, yeah, and even more so for post-Survival and pre-TV movie stuff. So yeah, and I think he must have gone also. I think Virgin New Adventures probably also took advantage of this in their books, which started up after the series was cancelled, and would go up until the BBC decided to focus on the 8th Doctor stories for the books range after the movie. Overall, the 7th Doctor is a hidden gem amongst the classic series Doctors, and I think it's gotten better over the last few decades. His 7th Doctor's reputation and popularity has gone up, so I'm hoping that his popularity will continue to increase and be more of a recognised popular incarnation. He also inspired this meme that we created on Universals.
Praise to Sylvester.
Praise to Sylvester indeed. Number 8. Oh, I really wanted to put this one higher. I honestly almost did. But if I'm going to put the 12th Doctor 10th, because even though he's got a bit of a rocky character journey, but we get there in the end, I think this Doctor, as much as I love the vibes, When we come to look at the character, there's a few that are probably objectively stronger. As much as I love him, and I would absolutely put him higher if I could. Maybe if we had season 3, Disney. And that is, of course, the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa. Oh, Ncuti, if any Doctor left too early, outside of the ones who only did like 1 or 2 stuff, it would be Christopher Eccleston, but we'll get on to him later. But if there was any other Doctor who left too early, it would be Matt Smith, because I think he should have done the 4th series and then gone. But if another actor who should have stayed on, who went too early, should have gotten another series, it would have been Colin Baker for reasons I already touched upon earlier. Okay, for realsies this time, but if an actor who I think should have had much more time in the role, but left early, too early even, outside of ones who only had made like Paul McGann's TV movie, The War Doctor, The Future Doctor, the 14th Doctor, only having a few appearances, it would be the 15th Doctor, Ncuti Gatwa, because, well, for starters, we only had about 18 months with him, at best, in the incumbent Doctor. Not even 18 months, it's like 17 and a half. At time of recording this, it's been over a year since his regeneration, and we don't even know if we've got the 16th Doctor or not. What's going on with Billie Piper, or is she a guest Doctor, like the War Doctor, or is she something else? And we're just kind of in a bit of a limbo state right now. Unlike with the World Disease, where we had the 7th and 8th Doctors as the incumbency, now we're kind of in a bit of a, wait, what are we doing now situation. And I don't entirely blame Ncuti for that. I mean, he left early. He left after season 2, and they had to scramble to get someone in. But I don't really blame him for why and for the resolution to this problem, which in itself has caused more problems to be resolved at Christmas. Hopefully. To quote Hugh Grant in Paddington 2, fingers, fingers, fingers. But okay, Ncuti Gatwa. He is absolutely incredible as the 15th Doctor, and he is a really fun incarnation. He's so lovable. He's great in the giggle, but Church on Ruby Road, there was just something there for both him and Millie Gibson's Ruby Sunday that just instantly clicked. And it was, yeah, we were right on board practically almost straight away. I'd say, I think where things started to trail off, I think the character himself is written fine. It's more so the fact that, is there much of a character journey? It's not really consistent. The 15th Doctor's supposed to be the one who's healed after everything, because the 14th Doctor's the one who's needing therapy, and they're doing it out of order. But isn't the 15th Doctor supposed to be the one who's healed? So why is he still kind of shut off half the time? Why is he still struggling to open up to people when he's supposed to be the more empathetic Doctor? I honestly find the 12th Doctor more open to talk to people sometimes. Not always. Like 15 is still like he's much more open to talking to people. It's just about certain things, and I feel like this is a trait that 13 struggled with as well. Even though 15 is more open than 13 regarding these, but he's not entirely open, and I think it's just sort of a kind of conflicting what he's supposed to be and what he actually does do. Like he's sort of half and half. He opens up sometimes, he's reserved other times, and I kind of get some of that with the Doctor as a character, but with probably the most open incarnation theoretically, and then other times he doesn't always do that. And there's also stuff that he says he's done, but we haven't actually seen him do it. That's like when he's talking to Ruby at the end of Empire stuff, and like he's like talking about stuff that he says he's done, but we haven't actually seen on screen. But aside from that, I think the character is written very well, and again, a ton of fun. And Ncuti definitely brings the energy into the role. He definitely makes the character his own. It's very hard to see anybody else in this role. But again, it's a little bit inconsistent regarding the intentions with this incarnation and the reality, not reality war, the reality of the character's depiction. It's kind of like 50-50 confliction a little bit from what it looks like. Also, he cries a lot, which is probably something on Ncuti. That was probably more of a him decision that the Doctor would cry a lot more. Be a more emotional Doctor. I swear every episode, apart from a few, like nearly every episode, the 73 Yards and Lucky Day, probably because those are Doctor Light, but Doctor Bubble's not Doctor Light, and he cries there. It is a little overdone when they are having a lot of tears and does take away from a couple of emotional scenes, like Ruby being shot by one of the clerics, or the outburst in Doctor Bubble, and so on. But in the end, he was a absolutely lovable incarnation, and would have loved to have seen more of him. Would have loved to have followed on more, but sadly, due to the season 3 not being commissioned in time and him not wanting to stick around waiting, he left very early in many fans' opinions, including myself. And I was pretty much, I think I was punched in the stomach, in the chest when he was regenerated. Well, I suppose it was more for the fact that it was Billy Piper who he regenerated into, and it was a massive punch. I think it was the biggest punch to a fan for a regeneration, because it came out so unexpectedly, and almost unexpectedly, but also how it was handled in the episode at the end as well. I mean, the scene with the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, was fun, even though it probably should have been Susan. But yeah, I think 15 had more. There was more for the character to do, and I think there should have been more. But in the end, we kind of got a bit screwed over it, and so did Ncuti. So no wonder he had to step down, or he decided to step down. Maybe we'll get him back at Christmas for a cameo, and we kind of wrap things up with him in a slightly better way, either then is the regeneration, or whatever's going on with Billy Piper is sorted and we get the actual 16th Doctor. But yeah, hopefully we'll get some sort of slightly better resolution there, slightly better handled. But as it stands, Ncuti's great. I think the character's great, if a little contradictory in places, a bit too emotional in some places, but doesn't open up when he could in other times. And overall, he didn't have as much time as maybe he should have. He should have had longer. He should at least one more series. Like, there was a possibility of him going to season 4 of the Bad Wolf era, which would have been season 43 overall, series 17 for New Who. But even if he just did season 3 and then that was it, that would have been great. But instead of getting one of our potentially longest incarnations, we got one of the shortest, outside of 1 or 2 times appearances. And considering we had the 14th Doctor for 3 episodes and a few bonus bits, and whatever has happened with Billy Piper will be 1 possibly. Yeah, it is a bit of a shame. Oh well. At least we've got the 16th Doctor to look forward to, and we'll rank them somewhere on this list when we've had a couple stories with them. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.